Yo family, welcome back to another Destiny 2 video on the channel. As promised, today we are doing a weapon focused video. So I spent some time over the last few days deciding on how exactly I was going to format this video. I was kind of bouncing between doing a specific guide for the new dungeon, what kind of weapon loadouts and things I was going to take in to face the many situations we might face, obviously going into the unknown with a brand new dungeon, and doing something just a little bit more like a generic shopping list of weapons that I would keep in your arsenal at all times, what kind of roles to go after and that kind of stuff. So where I've landed is kind of an in-between. All of these weapons I would suggest taking into the dungeon with you if you can get your hands on them or have them already, because they will be viable for things like dungeons, GM content, that kind of stuff. As with anything though guys, the weapons that I've chosen, the god rolls that I'll be providing or suggesting for you are all subjective, so if you don't agree then let us know down in the comments below. As long as it's respectful, I've got no issues whatsoever you sharing your ideas with the community. But with that said guys, if you do enjoy the video and find it helpful, leaving a like does really help me out. Let me know if you'll be taking part in the new dungeon as well, but for now, let's get started. So despite the fact that I've prettied up the thumbnail and everything to make it a little bit more interesting, there is going to be no sort of ranking of importance to these weapons today. I'm going to go through slot by slot, so we're going to go through the kinetic slot, the special slot and the heavy slot in that order, and I'm just going to talk to you guys about the weapons that I think you should be using on a regular basis in dungeon or GM level content. Of course, playlist activities such as your normal strikes and things like that, it doesn't matter guys, you can use whatever you want, whatever you find fun, test new weapons out there and all that business, but there is a little bit of a refinement to the weapons that I would take into something like a contest dungeon or GM. Alright, so let's kick things off with the kinetic slot then. I don't have any particular order of weapon archetypes that I'm going to go through. I'm literally going to speak about what I will regularly have on hand for GMs, for dungeons, that kind of stuff, and a good selection of the weapons that I'm going to be taking into the new dungeon as well. So let's start things off with the Midnight Coup hand cannon. Now you can pick this up from the old school version of Onslaught, which if you don't know, you can find that in the Vanguard playlist. Don't confuse this with Onslaught Salvation, which was the episode Revenant activity. This is a separate thing which came with Into the Light a few months ago within the game. So Midnight Coup, there are a few different roles that you can use for this. I actually keep two on hand with a third which you might want to consider as well. So I'm not going to go through on every weapon, the barrel and magazine and that kind of stuff, unless I think it makes a huge difference. For the most part, that is down to preference, whether you feel a weapon has too much kick, so you want it to have more stability, whether you feel like it's a little bit sluggish, so you want higher handling. That is completely up to you. What I'm going to focus on is the perk pairings. So for Midnight Coup, for any more sort of difficult activities or where there are more elites or mages present, I would go for explosive payload with kinetic tremors. The reason for this is, with this hand cannon itself being a very strong weapon and explosive payload as well, if you are using this weapon in normal activities, the enemies are going to be dead before kinetic tremors even procs. So that is why I'd keep this role to hand for more difficult content, where you're going to have more champions, where you're going to have more elites and mages available. Outside of that, I have another role which is explosive payload and frenzy. Explosive payload gives you the benefits of that pseudo unlimited range, with the fall off not happening for the actual explosive damage itself. And then frenzy gives you an always on 15% damage buff just for being in combat, which obviously is going to be majority of the time. So there's no setup or anything like that. It's literally just an extra damage buff, and that obviously is on at all times. The other role which you can consider going for is explosive payload with one for all. So explosive payload is going to proc one for all, which if you don't know means hitting 3 enemies gives you a 30% damage buff, and obviously explosive payload can help you proc this from a distance as well, so that is another role that you may want to consider. Moving on from there, we have the Blast Furnace, which is a pulse rifle, again acquired from the same activity, the old school Onslaught from the Vanguard playlist. Now this is my main weapon if I'm not using an exotic for dealing with champions. Pulse rifles often come up as some kind of champion weapon, and this is what I use for this. Again, I'm going with a role here of kinetic tremors and frenzy, so you're double dipping into damage buffs. You're getting that 15% from frenzy proccing from being in combat, plus you're also getting that kinetic tremors proc on more difficult targets, which in turn will do area of effect damage as well as damaging the main target you're shooting at. So this one is a good one for stunning champions and keeping them stunned with kinetic tremors, and it's also just a very good, nice feeling weapon as well. Moving on from there, we have the Lost Signal Area Denial Frame Grenade Launcher. This is from the first episode, Episode Echoes. So you can get hold of these by working through that content. You can buy them for engrams from Failsafe, and also you will unlock the ability to focus these, try and get those red bars for a crafted one. However, the role that you're going to be looking for on this is going to be auto load and holster and one for all. Auto load and holster means that you can fire this out, switch to another weapon and do some more damage, and then obviously come back to it and it's already reloaded for you. As I said before with Midnight Coup, one for all is a very good perk, and something like this is going to proc very easily in big groups of enemies. Also, I did misspeak when I said this is actually a 35% damage buff for hitting 3 enemies. So if you fire a round of this into a group of enemies, you're easily going to get that one for all proc. And this weapon, which it says in the name, is fantastic for area denial, closing down lanes, dealing with big groups of enemies, and also with that one for all does a ton of damage as well with that extra 35% damage. Moving on, we then have the Tenacious Mastery, which is a rocket-assisted frame sidearm in the stasis capacity, and I'm hoping that you guys will have heard about this as we've now finished our Iron Banner for the season, which is where you can acquire this from. If you've acquired some roles playing some Iron Banner, what you're going to be looking for is something like Air Trigger with Chill Clip or Loose Change with Chill Clip. Chill Clip being the definitive perk here because it's so strong against champions. With its slow and freeze capabilities, it deals with champions really well, all within this one weapon. Now, rocket sidearms are receiving some kind of nerfs going into episode Heresy, so we'll have to see how exactly they perform, but in my opinion, they're still going to be very good. Next up, I've kind of kept this one open a little bit, but you're going to want to get yourselves a good scout rifle with kinetic tremors ideally. Now, why kinetic tremors? As I've already explained, it's a very good perk because it deals a good amount of damage. It also can be dealt from afar, which will then lead into area of effect damage as well, chipping away at some damage from the enemies around the main target that you're shooting at. But not only that, it also forgoes things like we've started to see this season, like the debuffs in GMs, Oscillation being a perfect example. If you don't want to run the weapons that Bungie is trying to make you run from a perk like that, then additional damage perks such as Jolt and Feedback, Kinetic Tremors, those kind of things which deal area of effect damage, they don't suffer the debuff of the damage to the weapon. So these are very good for these situations, as well as, just like I've said, if you do find yourself in a fight where you need to keep yourself safe at a longer range, a scout rifle with Kinetic Tremors is going to be very good. So some of the options that we have for this are the Patron of Lost Causes, which you can find in the helm with Failsafe. Again, this is going to require those Echo Engrams from episode 1, so you can use those to turn in for Patron of Lost Causes, and not only that, you'll then be able to enhance those perks as well, as this weapon is enhanceable. Otherwise, you can go for a Hung Jury from the Onslaught event, once again from the Vanguard playlist. And both of these weapons you'll be able to pick up a Kinetic Tremors role. Now, if you're going for Patron of Lost Causes, in the first column to pair with Kinetic Tremors, you can look at Triple Tap, which is going to give you ammo back from precision hits, so making your ammo efficiency better. Or you can even look at something that's going to enhance your build, such as Strategist, which is going to give you class ability energy. But Hung Jury goes even one better than that. So with Hung Jury, Kinetic Tremors is actually in the first column. So you can then pair Kinetic Tremors with something else that's going to give you more damage. You can go for Firefly to cause area of effect damage when getting precision kills. You can go for One for All to get that 35% increased damage buff on top of Kinetic Tremors. You can also pair Kinetic Tremors with Explosive Payload if you really wanted to, or there is also Precision Instrument, which is going to increase your damage based on precision hits. So both of those weapons are going to be really good, guys, and it's up to you which activity you want to do and which way about it you want to go. Now, I do have some honourable mentions for each of the categories, which I'll do at the end of the video, but the final sort of weapon that I want to talk about for the kinetic slot, or the first space in your inventory, is going to be SMGs. Now, the best in class for me is going to be the Imminence SMG, which is farmable from the Salvation's Edge raid. Now, I know that is a problem for some people, but the reason that I suggest this one is because it comes with the perk Chaos Reshaped. Now, Chaos Reshaped is a perk that is unique to this raid, so you won't currently be able to find weapons with this perk anywhere else. Why this is so good is it's basically Frenzy on steroids. So for one stack of Chaos Reshaped, you get a 20% damage buff, and if you maintain that for a few seconds, it will go up to a ×2 stack, which will give you 35% damage buff just for being in combat, and on top of that, it will also periodically give a burst of healing. Then on top of those benefits, we also have Demolitionist to pair with it from the first column, which is of course going to give you grenade energy and also reload weapons when you throw a grenade. So it's just a very strong weapon, and it also provides great utility for close quarters combat should you be faced with any encounters such as holding plates or things like that. Now I know that raids are a barrier to entry for some people, I know that. Unfortunately though, my other option is the multi-mac SMG, which comes from Iron Banner. So at the time of uploading this video, Iron Banner has already finished until the next one that we get in episode Heresy. However, there might be a saving grace for this because the exact role that I would recommend was actually given out by Banshee and as far as I'm aware is still available. Providing that you have completed the Vesper's Host dungeon, you can go and pick up an Attrition Orbs and Kinetic Tremors multimac from Banshee in the tower. Now this role is fantastic because as you are dealing damage on a target with that SMG, it is going to be creating orbs of power which will feed into your build, your abilities, your supers coming back, and of course I've already mentioned how good that Kinetic Tremors perk is, so this is a really good combination on this SMG and will be your best option outside of the raid SMGs. So let's move on to the special weapons section. First off, we have the Versus or the VS Velocity Baton. This is one of only 2 of these area denial frame grenade launchers. Obviously, we already spoke about the Lost Signal in the other section, but this one is just as good, if not better. So this one is Void Affinity. And in the first column, it comes with things if you are building into a Void build, like Repulsor Brace, so you can get yourself overshields. Well, the perk I want to point out is Demolitionist. In the second column, you can get Attrition Orbs. So when you are firing this wave of energy into a group of ads, you are not only getting grenade energy from Demolitionist, you are also generating a ton of orbs with Attrition Orbs. So this is going to feed back into your build, it can heal you, it can gather towards your super, it can give you armor charges, it can do a lot of stuff for your build. But this weapon is really fantastic, and that Demolitionist with Attrition Orbs pairing is what I'd be going for. So this weapon is farmed from the Vesper's Host dungeon, and the best place to do this in my opinion is the first encounter. The first encounter in my opinion is very accessible. It will take you a little bit longer, but you can even do this solo if you really wanted to. But if you do want some help with this, my Discord link will be pinned in the comment down below. Hop in there and someone will be surely kind enough to help you out with this, or I do stream at twitch.tv/IamSideQuestSam. I'll be streaming, helping people out with various things. So if this is something you want to do, hop in, join in with everybody, and we'll get you through this at some point as well. Next up, I want to talk about the Vantage Point Pulse Rifle. Now, this is a double-edged sword because I'm talking about this weapon because it is a very good weapon and I would recommend getting this specific weapon, but also about a specific perk which comes on a couple of others as well, which makes this thing all the more worthwhile having. So Vantage Point is a arc-based pulse rifle, which is very good. Again, having energy-based versions of scouts and pulses and things like that are always going to be good for dealing with champions as Bungie change what champion weapons we have and all that kind of business. But the main reason we're talking about this is a perk called Jolting Feedback, which is one of the newest additions to the game. So dealing repeated damage with a weapon inflicts jolt, and while amplified, jolt is applied faster. Now, Bungie have already sort of, well, pretty much let us know that we are heading for an episode of Arc builds with episode Heresy, and this is going to make those even better. So specifically for this weapon, I recommend the perk combination of Eddy Current with Jolting Feedback. Jolting Feedback, like I've just said, is going to apply jolt when you deal sustained damage, and when you're amplified, that's going to be even faster. And Eddy Current increases reload speed and handling whilst you are amplified. So this is going to give you a massive boost to your reload speed, meaning that you can start reapplying that Jolting Feedback even quicker. So this weapon is farmed out from the current seasonal activities in episode Revenant, so whether that be Onslaught, Salvation, or whatever the case may be, you are definitely going to want to get your hands on one of these. Now, the other reason that I mentioned this is because I didn't want to sort of break down everything because we're just talking mainly about this perk, but that perk also comes on the Noxious Vetiver, which is a submachine gun from the same set of weapons that you can farm. This can get rolls of either Loose Change with Jolting Feedback. Again, Loose Change, when you are applying a debuff, which Jolt is going to allow a fast reload speed. It's going to give you plus 50 to reload speed, allowing you to reload this thing insanely quickly. Or if you weren't too bothered about that, you can also pair Attrition Orbs with Jolting Feedback. Again, that loop of having an additional damage buff from jolting feedback, and also having attrition orbs making you orbs for healing, builds, super, whatever the case may be. Another thing this comes on, which again going back to that Vesper's Host dungeon, is the Versus Pyroelectric Propellant, which is an arc auto rifle. This also comes with that same pairing that I recommended before of eddy current with jolt and feedback, but this one also has the options of attrition orbs with jolt and feedback, and if you wanted to build into your class ability energy, strategist is available in this first column to pair with jolt and feedback again. Now my obviously suggestion would be for this one attrition orbs with jolt and feedback, because that is going to be a fantastic pairing. Auto rifles are going to be really strong I think soon too, so this is another really good weapon to have. Now finally, Bittersweet, which is a grenade launcher again from this Revenant set of weapons. This does also come with those same perk offerings, so you can have jolt and feedback with attrition orbs, with loose change, whatever the case may be. Currently I think we already have a lot of good grenade launchers in the game, so I would probably suggest out of the 4 weapons listed that the grenade launcher would be of the least priority, but the pulse rifle, SMG and auto rifle I would definitely recommend getting. One, because this perk is very strong and that is one of only a handful of weapons that it comes on, but 2, as I said, arc is going to be very strong in this upcoming season, and I can't help but think that these are going to be major tools to have. And let's not forget, on top of that, if you are up to date with the story and activities of Revenant, you can also use your tonics to focus farm for these weapons as well. Moving on from there, let's talk about something a little bit different, and it's actually going to be the first exotic weapon that I've brought up today, and that is the Ergo Sum Sword. So you can farm this out after completing the Final Shape campaign. You'll need to run a few quests until you get this unlocked, but then you can get this from various different places and activities across the Pale Heart. Now, a lot of people who are in the know are using this weapon, but I think it is largely slept on, and that is due to the fact that people probably don't know all the different combinations of frames and perks that come with this. What I am going to suggest to you though is either a wave frame or caster frame with the arc conductor perk. Now this perk is essentially from the Risk Runner SMG, and what it's going to do is when dealing arc damage you're going to get an arc shield, but it's also going to chain electricity between enemies. So you proc this perk and just run along and everything around you is going to die. This in my opinion is one of the best add clear weapons within the game. So the next weapon I want to talk about again comes from the Final Shape activities or the Pale Heart, and this one absolutely nobody talks about this, and that is the No Hesitation Auto Rifle. This was a brand new utility that was brought to the game where it allows you to both damage and heal your allies at the same time. So essentially you can use the weapon as normal to damage enemies. It comes with fantastic rolls, which I would suggest Incandescent and Demolitionist, building up Demolitionist energy, add clear and AoE with that Incandescent, and then you can also hip fire this at your allies to heal them as well. In turn, when you heal allies, it also increases your damage on the weapon. So I don't know why not many people talk about this. It has fantastic perk pairings, it has dual utility, you can increase its damage while also being able to heal your allies as well. Maybe some people don't like playing the support role, but honestly guys, this thing is about to become really good, so I would definitely suggest going and getting one of these or crafting it if possible. Again, I know we've mentioned them already because I said that there is a nerf coming to these, so we do need to see how exactly they play out. But nevertheless, 2 very good weapons are the Aberrant Action Solar Rocket Assisted Sidearm, which comes from Episode 1 Echo's content. Again, you can work through the content and earn these from the activities, and you can also get the ability to focus and directly buy them as well. The perfect pairing for this one, in my opinion, is going to be anything of your choosing with Incandescent. But in my opinion, the best pairing with it is going to be Heal Clip. This allows you to deal area of effect damage and deal with large groups of adds, as well as being able to get healing when you reload the weapon. The other one is the Indebted Kindness, which is farmed from the Warlord's Ruin dungeon. The best way to do this is to farm the first encounter of that. And on this one, you'll be looking for something like Lead from Gold or Loose Change with that Volt Shot perk. Lead from Gold is going to allow you to gain special ammo from heavy bricks, and Loose Change is going to allow you to reload quicker after applying the Volt Shot debuff, which is then going to allow you to reload and reapply that even quicker. Both at the current moment, guys, are very, very strong weapons in the game, and I can't see that changing too drastically, even with the nerfs upcoming. Alright, so with that covered, let's move on finally to our heavy weapons. Now, for me personally, as an overview, rocket launchers and grenade launchers are still the strongest weapons in the game right now. I do have an inclination that Linear fusion rifles will eventually make a return to the heavy meta, and of course machine guns are machine guns as they've always been. They're good for ad clear and they are good in certain situations for that heavy damage, but if you are looking for burst damage or if you are looking for sustained damage for a long-term boss fight, then that is really what we're going to be covering in the video today. Now, first of all, just before we get into the other stuff, I'm not joking. As I said in the video when I covered the changes, Darcy, I think, is actually about to become a very good weapon. I know it's been a meme for the longest time. They've made changes and it's made no difference, but I think it's actually about to become good. With the changes that are coming for Heresy, they are essentially making it a sniper rifle version of the Galahorn. So what I mean by that, guys, is by applying damage with this weapon and proccing its perk, you are then going to increase the damage of other legendary snipers within your team. Now, I know not every boss fight calls for this, not every boss has a decent crit box or anything like that, but if those situations arise, which they may do, considering they don't normally just make changes for the sake of it, then this is going to be a very good weapon for at least one of your fire team to have. You will essentially debuff the enemy by increasing the damage of other sniper rifles, and your teammates can then choose legendary sniper rifles, which will allow for sustained damage and good ammo economy to obviously inflict good DPS. So definitely, Darcy, if you don't have it, go and pick that up and get it, as I think its time may be about to come up. So in terms of grenade launchers, let's start there first. So we have the Edge Transit, which is available from the Onslaught activity from the Vanguard menu, and essentially what you are going to want to look for on this is Envious Assassin and Bait and Switch. Envious Assassin is going to allow you to overflow your magazine based on kills with other weapons, and then Bait and Switch is going to allow you 10 seconds of 30% buffed damage by hitting the enemy with all three of your weapons. So you're going to have to spray them with your Kinetic, your Special, and then your Heavy, and that is going to proc that 30% damage for 10 seconds. Obviously, because you've got an overflowed magazine, it means you can unload and mag dump that ammo and hit that for that 30% extra damage, which is a very, very good and recurring theme across heavy weapons. Bait and Switch is a fantastic perk. We then have the VS Chill Inhibitor, which is a stasis grenade launcher from the Vesper's Host dungeon. This is also another weapon if you had completed the Vesper's Host dungeon, which you can pick up from Banshee in the tower, so just check to see if that's the case, because he is giving out my recommended perk pairing of Envious Arsenal with Bait and Switch. So Envious Arsenal is actually better than Envious Assassin in the sense that it overflows your magazine by doing damage with your other weapons. So by the time you've cleared that ads and you're ready for that damage phase with the boss, you've got that overflowed magazine ready to proc Bait and Switch and take advantage of a full mag dump with 30% extra damage. So again, this is a very good one, guys. Check with Banshee if he's got that role for you there. If he doesn't, then it's going to be into Vesper's Host to farm. So for me right now, those two grenade launchers are the best damage weapons you can use in the heavy slot, but I do have some exotic recommendations for you as well, most of which, if you don't have them, you'll be able to pick up for some materials at the exotic kiosk in the tower. If not, they are going to be quest related. So quest related, we have the Parasite exotic grenade launcher, which you can pick up from part of the Witch Queen campaign. After you've finished all that, it is an additional quest that you can follow through and get. This is a fantastic weapon for burst damage. You can build up stacks, and then once you get to times 20, you can fire a shot to do an absolutely insane amount of burst damage. This is fantastic for the Vesper's Host dungeon and also for a lot of boss situations where they have ads within the phase as well. This is a really good one to have. We then have the Grand Overture, which you can pick up from the kiosk in the tower. This works largely the same, despite the fact that it functions mainly as a machine gun. As you are getting kills with said machine gun, you are proccing up stacks. When you get to the maximum, you can then unload this into a rocket launcher barrage, which does an absolute ton of damage. Again, very, very good for the Vesper's Host boss, and again for other boss phases as well. One weapon that I see barely anybody talk about, which is part of a quest after the Lightfall campaign, is the Deterministic Chaos Machine Gun. This has the ability to weaken enemies, it's also very strong against barrier champions, and for a machine gun it has a really large damage area, so damage fall off is pretty good on this weapon. I most recently have been using it with the arms dealer GM, which was very, very good. So this is definitely something to consider. A lot of people sleep on it. Most people don't like it because it only has just under a 50 size magazine, but if you throw on an avoid holster, guys, this will auto reload itself and takes away that penalty of of having a small mag size. Again, very good utility, definitely one to have in your arsenal. Something else that nobody talks about, which again can be picked up from the exotic kiosk, is the Prospector exotic grenade launcher. This thing has a very fast fire rate, so you can mag dump all of its ammo really easily, and on getting kills it also has clusters which create arc explosions, dealing even more damage. Another exotic pick which is going to be very good in a lot of situations is the Dragon's Breath rocket launcher. This is going to do impact damage as well as creating area of effect with scorch damage, and also as the fuel builds up in this, it's going to do even more damage as well, causing ignitions and a whole bunch of other things which are going to help you out in both boss situations and ad clear as well. Another niche pick we have is the Leviathan's Breath heavy bow. This is very strong against unstoppable champions, but can also stagger bosses and unshielded enemies as well. This would require being able to be played at a little bit further range, as it is quite slow and sluggish of a weapon, but nevertheless is very good in some situations. Finally, for rocket launchers themselves, I'm not going to go into each individual one. I'm going to name drop some of those, such as the Apex Predator, such as the Crux Termination, such as the Hothead. Any of these, realistically, you are going to be wanting to look for perks such as Clown Cartridge or something that increases the magazine size like Reconstruction, and you're then going to want to have either Bipod, depending on if you are wanting to fire off a ton of rockets in one go, or something which has bait and switch, so you're able to proc that extra 30% damage on top of everything else. So that's it for the weapons today, guys. Just in terms of honorable mentions, most of which are exotics that I just wanted to sort of name drop. I know this is already a long video, but hopefully the timestamps and stuff will have helped out with that. So in terms of other weapons that I would bring, anything that has intrinsic capabilities for champions which you may need to cover, such as Arbalest, such as Wishender, things like that will be fantastic, of course, depending on if you want to use your exotic slot for them. We then have things as well like the Outbreak Perfected. In any damage phases where you are likely to dump all of your heavy and special ammo and still need to obviously hit a DPS check, this is a fantastic primary in order to use for this situation. Despite the nerf back down to its original RPM, Graviton Lance is still a very strong weapon for ad clear and for use in GMs and harder content. If you can't get hold of either of the area denial frame grenade launchers, With the Horde of course is still going to be a mainstay for dealing damage to groups of enemies as well as single targets. If you can't get hold of the Ergo Sum Sword, then the Risk Runner is still very good as an SMG, which will provide those same perks in terms of the Arc Shield and the Chain Lightning damage. And despite the nerfs it faced, I still think that Trinity Ghoul is a very good weapon for ad clear, so don't sleep on that one either. Anyway guys, like I said, I know it's a long video and it's absolutely impossible for me to cover every single weapon archetype and its best weapons for every single scenario. What I've listed today though are some ideas of things that, depending on situations, I will take with me into things like contest mode stuff or GMs, depending on what the situation is. So hopefully it gives you at least an idea of some things to put together for your kit, or some things to go and farm if you still need to. As I said, let me know down in the comments below what you think of my list. Let me know what you would add, or if you would change any of the roles I've suggested. And once again, as always guys, I really do appreciate those of you that stay right till the end of the video, because it really does help out with the algorithm. But wherever you are in the world today guys, I hope you have a fantastic one, and I'll catch you in the next video. Bye bye.